Welcome to the Really Know Your Customer podcast with your hosts, Betsy Westhafer and Tony Bodo. Join Betsy and Tony as they dive in with highly successful C-suite leaders who have grown successful organizations by creating a laser focus on listening to their customers and building deep customer relationships. Now, it's time to join Betsy and Tony for the Really Know Your Customer show.
Welcome to the Really Know Your Customer podcast. I'm Tony Bodo.
And I'm Betsy Westhafer. We're so glad you're here to join us today.
Absolutely. Betsy, I got to tell you, I am so excited about sharing this interview with Roger Beadle. This guy is amazing, and the company that he's created with his partner, Megan, is phenomenal. A couple key things that why I'm so excited about this interview is that, we talk about things like the future of customer experience, and not just the trends that you read about in the magazines and the newsletters out there, but we're going to get down to some really deep understanding of where customer experience is headed and why. We're also going to talk about the future of work and this thing that they've created, a whole new category out there called GigCX. If you think about Uber, or you think about Airbnb, and then you apply that model to the customer experience and customer service sector. And if you don't understand what I'm saying, listen to the show, because you're going to absolutely love it. If you're a CEO listening to this, you've got to think about how this applies to your company in the future.
I agree, Tony. And speaking of CEOs, this is such an interesting case study on how CEOs should be thinking, particularly in light of this massive change in the world that we've all been going through. Roger and his partner Megan have created this company and they named it Limitless because the potential is truly limitless for what they're out to do. And they built this on the premise that every individual just has this limitless potential to succeed and deserves to be valued. And they really built their company based on their employees' needs and in a way that serves their customers. So they shaped this technology to build crowds of qualified experts who can answer questions on behalf of their customers. So it's like an on-demand customer service platform, which I find to be totally fascinating. It comes from their history of running 2,000 plus seat customer centers, call centers. They're based in London, England, but they're global. So they have this really big global perspective. And Roger and Megan both have over a 20-year history of success in this space and have taken all of their learnings into this new model. So I think it's just going to be an amazing listen for our CEO audience out there. So with that, let's get started. Let's jump in. So welcome, Roger. We're so happy that you could join us today. And as we were laughing when we first logged on, you have a beautiful sunrise background in San Francisco. And you mentioned that that's where your heart is. But tell us where you really are right now.
Well, where I really am is just outside of London in a little village called Cobham in a county called Surrey. And actually today, I was about to look out of a window that you can't see, but I can report that the weather is just as it is over the Bay Bridge here. It's lovely and sunny.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, Tony. And I've been so excited to have this conversation with you. So let's just dive right in. Your path is very exciting and very interesting with what you're doing currently with Limitless Technologies. And so can you talk to us just about how you found yourself in this place and the history of your industry and how it's evolving and changing so quickly, and what you and your co-founder Megan are doing to address that evolution?
Yes, so we're in the customer service industry and the CX space, if you like. Megan and I have worked in the industry for the last 25 years. We have previously owned and built and run outsourced call center businesses. So we have a lot of experience within that marketplace. And some of the challenges that traditional contact center model faces have been at high levels of attrition, but also low pay across the sector. Many people on minimum wage, living wage across the world as well. And, we felt as operational practitioners when we were considering starting a new business back in 2016, having previously run contact centers for the last 20 years for enterprise businesses in Europe, we were looking at where is the future going in terms of the CX industry, but also where is the future of work, and how the two things needed to come together and run in parallel. So from the future of the industry, we could see the rise of the digital channels, messaging, social, and in particular the asynchronous messaging. And we could see also the huge growth in the movement of the freelancer and the freelancing workforce. So that gave us the inspiration, if you like, for Limitless, which is the business that Megan and I co-founded back in 2016. And Limitless is a crowd sourcing platform that enables enterprise businesses to effectively onboard expert product users and enable them to help and support other customers on demand and pay them and reward them for their time.
It's an incredible model and very creative. So tell us a little bit about why now, why this is so important, what you did in terms of research to bring these two things together, the freelance model, the customer service model, just kind of your mental path toward developing what you've built so far.
Yeah. Well, firstly, a lot of our experiences running contact centers, running enterprise call centers for clients, we had to think about, can we break down all of the elements of what we used to provide in an outsourced call center and create that within what we call our smart crowd platform, but within a crowdsourcing platform. Effectively, could we Uberize the call center model? And of course, we had to think about the genesis of the idea, if you like, which was, are there people out there with the talent, the knowledge, passion, and capability to provide great support to other people? And there's a resounding yes to that question. Undoubtedly, there are lots of people that have the talent, the skill, the knowledge. So we therefore, now it's not it's not will it work, it's how can you make it work was our mindset. How do we make that work? So of course, we looked at the gig working and freelancer model. We looked at down in the detail of how the Uber model was working, but also not just the pros, but also the cons of the model. So I remember back in 2016, we studied in the UK, there's been some various lawsuits around the classification of workers, etc. And what we did was we looked at that to make sure that we built our platform in a way that it wouldn't contravene some of those court findings around that worker status. So I can cover those off at a later point if you'd like me to. But we also looked at security of data, how we would protect the customer data. We looked at how we could build an innovative quality management process. These are three of the big areas. So making sure that the platform works as a true freelancing platform, studying that industry space, looking at data security, so GDPR, which is a regulation in Europe, which is a very high standard of data security. So ensuring that our platform was built in such a way where what we call personal identifiable information, known as PII, is not shared with people that it cannot be shared with, so i.e. potentially the experts on our platform in this scenario. We also focused on quality. And one of the areas that we really were quite focused on was, how could we create a scalable quality solution? And we looked at the name Limitless. Obviously, was a lot of this is about scalability. The name is very important to us about creating that scale and limitless potential for people, limitless potential for our clients, etc. So we wanted to find an innovative peer-to-peer review process. So one of the ways on our platform where if an expert who is answering a question on behalf of a client for a customer if we receive customer feedback, very similar to how you work on Uber or Airbnb or eBay. You're having a dialogue with an expert who is helping you solve your technical support issue, troubleshooting, account related issue, setup issue, whatever it might be. And at the end of that experience, you're rating it on a kind of 5-star rating and confirming that, you know, your query has been resolved. But where that doesn't happen in a timely fashion, or should you receive a lower rating, we needed a way to be able to be checking and quality checking all of the tickets that were running through the platform. And the way that we do that is we use other qualified peers with high ratings of quality on the platform to verify the accuracy and quality of the answers that that other experts are providing on the platform, creating a much more scalable model and reliable model. So in answer to your question, you know, there's lots that we had to study in terms of breaking the call center down into its component parts, but worker status, security of data, and quality are 3 of the key engines that we absolutely had to get right. And I'm pleased to say we built an amazing platform that absolutely delivers on those 3 points and many more.
And Roger, you've had some really great success for the short amount of time that you've been in business. You've got some big name clients that you work with. You've gotten some support in other ways. Do you want to share some of that with us about how you feel that you were able to garner that level of adoption so quickly?
Well, I think there's an appetite in the market for transformation and innovation. I think what you've got to look at a markets where there are different market forces at play, and kind of push and pull factors. I like to think of them. So one of them, which is I really particularly like, is that consumers are becoming quite demanding and moving to digital channels. Their behavior is changing, creating what I call a pull factor. In other words, if you want to do business with me as a consumer, I'm now wanting to use other channels, in particular social channels and digital and messaging channels. Okay. Now, that creates a need, though, in the enterprise to support that consumer shift. Not only is it a shift in volume, it's a shift in the nature of how that volume is arriving, the predictability of how that volume is coming to the organization, making what was already an insurmountable problem of predicting the amount of fixed resources that you needed to support the volume of support tickets that would be coming into the organization. Now, in a world where you've got 24/7 social digital messaging and asynchronous messaging. So what that clearly means is that messages they're broken apart and they're coming in at different points throughout a conversation. You need a different kind of workforce. So that's there enters the gig economy, enters a more flexible on-demand need. You needed to create that capacity and that capability. So I think that has helped us obviously create the story. I think at the C-suite level, there's an understanding that there's a need to move away from kind of fixed resourcing models to much more fluid resourcing models. So there's a desire there. And if you go across the C-suite, you could look at the CFO who wants to mirror the costs much more aligned to their demand. You want the COO who desperately needs to deliver on these challenging service levels and KPIs. Customer success is really raising it, in terms of a level of importance. And you could go across the C-suite. Marketing needs to have more engagement with consumers, more insight with consumers. And of course, for years, it's been quite fashionable to talk about putting the consumer at the heart of your business. I like to think that the gig model does exactly that. What better story could you tell? One of our clients, eBay, has experienced sellers on the platform helping other sellers to be more successful. They are saying, I think, to the world, we believe in our community of sellers so much and our brand and our product that we're willing to let them represent us in helping others to be more successful. I think once a brand gets to that level, I think it's reached a different stratosphere in terms of where it can take its support through transparency and trust that I think is seriously lacking in other brands. So it's no surprise in some respects that therefore that we've seen this adoption. I'm very proud that we've been able to achieve that with the kinds of brands that we're working with. Global brands like Unilever and L'Oreal and Microsoft and many others, as you know. And, the analysts are predicting that we've created a category in our sales in calling it GigCX. Yeah, so it didn't exist a few years ago. And by creating this, this platform, there's a whole new category kind of taking off. And there's pleased to say there's some other companies that are also coming into the market with similar kinds of offerings, which is great. There's no better for a founder to realize that you're going to have competition because it strives you to achieve more, but it also tells you there is a market and there's a need. And I think we're stepping into that need. So I think I'm very, very proud of what we've achieved, and I think there's a lot more to come. And then finally, the analysts have also begun to recognize this. So, Gartner are predicting now that within the next 3 to 4 years, as much as 35% of consumer support will be provided from a gig worker, a GigCX category. And that's just amazing. When we founded the business, our goal was that we wanted to empower anyone on the planet to be able to earn money for supporting the brands they love. That's our ultimate vision, to create that opportunity. I'm pleased to say that we're doing that, and systematically I can see us transforming an industry, which was always our goal. It's wonderful to start businesses and think of entrepreneurs just maybe focused on value in some way, creating value. But there's so much more, because I think for us, we want to change an industry for the better. It's one that we were really passionate about, but we just could not break the shackles of poor, inconsistent customer service, because the model just simply doesn't suit the task. You've got the wrong tool for the job.
One of the things that really stands out to me, Roger, and I love the explanation you've given here, is that you're really going to the stratosphere. You're changing the value model. And very specifically, in the customer service world, we're all familiar with, it's like, I've got a problem, let me call in and get it fixed. But, intuitively, I get the sense, like, if I was helping someone with a brand I love, the product or service, maybe they call me with a problem, but then I sit there, I can imagine that I would start to talk about how they can use this product in so many new and different ways than they ever imagined, right? Which that moves us from customer service, which is the old way of doing business, to customer success, because we want to create value for other people. And that shift is so fundamental. I'd love to hear your thoughts around maybe what's happening there and why it's happening right now.
Yeah, so I think I'm really quite passionate about if you like, the theory of customer success, because I think it's been around for a while, obviously, in terms of conceptual, but I think it's growing as a requirement, largely because also with some of the more transactional types of inquiries going to automation, or not even this, self-service, you can go on and you can do much of the kind of manual tasks, if you like, online. There is amazingly not a reduction, though, in the overall demand for humans, for people with the skills to support customers. So kind of, well, how's that work? If we're moving automation, how can overall demand still be increasing? There are different factors. A couple of them in principle. One is complexity is increasing, and that's not necessarily system complexity, just complexity of the tasks that are not being automated, they take a bit longer. But also the shift to digital. Actually, remember that pull push factor, because consumers want to use those channels. The better, when you provide great service in those channels, which is I would encourage you to do, you will create some extra demand. Now, it's not infinite demand, but you will see potentially an uplift in demand. So that will absorb some of that capacity potentially, but it's not unnecessary or low value demand, because remember, the demand that's coming through to people is the stuff that isn't being automated. So what do I mean by that? It's the opportunity, I think, of customer success. There's some other opportunities, but customer success. So for those, what is the definition of customer success? For me, it's obviously making sure that customers get the true value of the products and services that they bought from you, whether they subscribe or they purchase those products. How can they unlock that true value? So in terms of bringing the GigCX model to unlocking that value potential, well, that's a very good example of, again, the eBay model that I mentioned. How do you unlock the value of that platform? By engaging people with the expertise that are already seeing the value. They've already unlocked the value. They found the special sauce, the recipe. How do you help the others in that community, customer cohort, subscriber, unlock that value too? It would apply to Disney Plus and Netflix. It would apply to Uber. It would apply to lots of different companies. Same concept of using people that have already unlocked the value of your product services to help others. Okay, so sounds like that could cost us a lot of money. Why would we want to do that? Well, it's a lot cheaper to retain the customers, as we all know. You can find lots of data in terms of supporting evidence that customer churn retention is a place to absolutely focus on. So if we can improve the value that people realize from our products and services, we're going to see less churn. If we see less churn, hey, we've got a more stable base of revenue, and we can expand our revenue further as well. Customer success also gives you the right to then build on that as well, and then sell additional services and expand your services to the customers. So I actually think the future of support is in the world of, yes, complexity where it can't be self-serve, but it is in the world of value, and in particular, reducing churn through creating more value, but also upsell, cross-sell opportunities.
Roger, you mentioned earlier about being a category creator, and with that come huge rewards, but also some inherent challenges, one of which being just educating the market. If it's something that new that they may not be familiar with, how do you go about educating basically the world about this new category, and how does that impact how you go to market in terms of reaching out to customers and just making sure that you spend the time that they need to fully understand the impact of what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it is really hard work, and it is really challenging to be able to do this. And companies that can actually succeed, I'm sure there are many examples of different companies that have had category potential that it's not actually materialized. So we've still got a long way to go, but as I mentioned, with the recognition of the analysts and the growth of competitors in the space, there is a building momentum in this new category. How do we do that? I think breaking it down into different elements. Of course, in terms of our outreach, thank you for inviting me to this podcast. This would be a great example of sharing, and talking to people a bit about GigCX, and that, of course, is important. We also are talking clearly to analysts, and then we also have lots of other various activities. So there's a lot of noise that you need to create. You need to obviously create the right kind of positive noise and get that kind of momentum. And you kind of always need to have that dialed up. So there's this kind of constant noise there about GigCX. So thought leadership and outreach, of course, goes without saying. In terms of our clients, I think the sales process is really interesting because when you're in a new category and you're in B2B enterprise and you go and you're selling to the company, you're not talking normally to procurement. We're definitely not talking to procurement because there's no box for procurement to put you in. There's no RFP process for this new category. And it's a common problem, and many companies have faced this. How you face this as a growing company, creating a new category, is really important. Got to recognize, I personally think I love this in terms of having dealt with sourcing departments over many years, and maybe that's a podcast for another day. There's a lot of opportunity for maybe a revolution within sourcing in terms of looking at value as opposed to just pure cost. And, that's a discussion for another day. Fortunately, we're selling to the C-suite, typically, definitely at EVP, SVP level within our enterprise client target base. And we are talking to them, obviously, about the things I mentioned earlier on, the benefits of the solution, the agility, the flexibility of the model in order to fix some of the challenges they have within their resourcing currently. So we've got the story. One of the things you have to do is you have to be prepared to educate and go through a discovery kind of process. So if I just give you the analogy, you can't land, meet one person, even budget holder, even if you find your perfect buyer within an enterprise, very difficult to do, as we know, but you've arrived and you're at the right place with the right person. If you've got a new category, that one individual in an enterprise is very unlikely to be able to take you from here all the way through to an executed contract and delivery. They have a team and they also have peers, and you have to go through an educational process and discovery. And for us, what's really important is we understand that and we don't rush that process. And it's just the classic invest time, the right time, go through those stages. And I won't go, our special sauce is our recipe of how we do that, but we go through these stages. And then at the right juncture, we've taken enough of the stakeholders and peers within a decision-making cohort to actually then go faster through the final stages. Yeah. What we found early on was we had the senior sponsorship and moved quite quickly to, if you like, a proposal stage. But when we went to the implementation stage, because we hadn't taken everybody else on the journey, we had to do the discovery and the education all over again. And what's worse, even the first few times we did this, we had to do the same phone call 15, 20 times because no one, so, lots of learning, as you can imagine, and it's really tough. But that would be a big lot of advice I would give to anyone in a similar place.
That's powerful. 15 or 20 phone calls. That's a lot from a sales process. Insane.
I could tell you, saying the same thing that many times, you wish you just recorded yourself and played it through, which obviously is one way of doing it. But you need that personal touch. But workshops and different things. There's different ways through this. So
yeah. Very cool. So the one place I want to go that you talked about as we were prepping for the show, and it got me really excited to have this part of the conversation. There's a lot of talk about customer experience of the future, and I don't want to go down the what we normally read in Inc. or Forbes or any of the others. I want to talk about your take on customer experience of the future, and then segue from that into the future of work, because you're clearly in both of those spaces and creating that future. But I know you see what's happening, and that's why you're able to create what you're creating. So give us some insights there. Where do you see CX really going? Where do you see the future of work going? And then maybe bring them back together with this GigCX idea.
Megan and I see that in the next 5 years, that as an ecosystem of support, and that automation, self-service, and robotics, there'll be a place for this. But there'll also be a place where some of that automation and robotics is actually enabling humans to work even more smarter and more efficiently and more helpfully in how they're providing support to consumers. I also think that, consumers demand, I don't see it going away fast because of the reasons we've discussed: growing digital volumes, changing behavior, and a need to fulfill ever increasing complexity in products. Most products and services these days have a technology component. Technology components are great, but they often need setting up. They obviously need connecting to other devices. They can suffer different issues. Products are changing. So the nature of support and the nature of contacts are changing too. So, this ecosystem, yes, there'll be further advances, but customers will still need guidance. Customers would still need reassurance, and customers would still be looking for advice. Yeah. So guidance, how do you do something? I am struggling to follow this online robotic process. It's not working. You reach out, you cry for help. Guidance, reassurance. You will not overnight change a human instinct to actually, regardless of being told by a letter, a machine, a text message, people will still reach out for some kind of affirmation, confirmation that, something, action is going to happen. So there will still be this need for reassurance in some way or another. And then finally, advice. And on advice, it's not the same as guidance in as taking you through a process. Advice is this better for me, or is this better for me? That kind of advice, yeah. And there'll be other things too. But in that area, you'll still need people. And the companies that can provide that kind of resource on demand, at the moment, in the moment, where it matters, is key. I also think that where support is provided linked to customer success is going to change. For me, why do you have to go to a contact us area, help pages to find support? It should be in the product, right? So part of what we're doing with our clients, and why isn't it in the product? It's not in the product because customer service and the product teams and the marketing teams are not normally connected in organizations. That's one part. The other part is because the customer service team is seen as a cost center. It's not seen as a value add center. That's been said many years for the last 20 years, but it's never been solved. However, if you can link that customer success idea, so helping people get more value and putting that support in the product where it matters. So again, let me give our eBay as our example here. You're a seller, you're a new seller, you're listing your product. You don't need to go off to another page to help find some article, do a live chat over here. What you needed was someone right there that you could say, how do I do that to maximize my chance of selling? Or how do I do this? Because I haven't done it before. And boom, if you can get contextual, relevant advice, trusted advice, empathetic advice, because they've also struggled with the same issues, then I think you're moving to the next level of support. So it's an ecosystem, the future in CX. It's going to combine everything. It won't just all be about robots and automation. That will play a part, but there'll be this value add component. Demand's not going to go away in the next 5 years. And then in future of work, I can only talk about from running a business, my perspective as a CEO with Megan and I as co-founders, our perspective of the future of work for our company. I could give that, and I could also talk about what I see in terms of demographic shift and change. So, within the next 4 or 5 years, I think up to 70 by 2025, the stats are out there. 75% of the workforce is going to be millennials and Gen Zs. Pretty scary, not because of who they are, they're wonderful people, but just how old I'm getting. But they're going to be 75% of them. Now, the way that they consume things, the way they're going to work, the way they're going to act is going to be different, generational differences, but quite a paradigm shift, quite a generational shift. It won't just be, it could be quite, sort of step change stuff, because why would it necessarily be as slow as it's been between the sort of 70s to 90s? It could be a much faster evolution of how people want to work And I think that's only going to be accelerated, obviously, by the C word, the COVID word. That is also speeding things up. So I think you don't need me to tell you it's going to change. We're not going backwards, we're going forwards. I think macroeconomics as well play a part here. You've got to think about poor wage inflation. You've got to think about the various unemployment that's going to, unfortunately, be global. People are going to be looking for other ways to find work and income. A wider story for context for Limitless is that we're about providing people the opportunity to find incremental work to top up either other revenue, money that they've got coming in, other incomes, or just to have actually like a purpose. So we're looking for people that maybe do 4 or 5 hours a week and absolutely do an amazing job for that, because we know that works really well in customer service. From our time in call centers, agents can get burnt out quite quickly if they're just doing very repetitive tasks. So little and often really good is the Limitless kind of way. And that's how we provide such great service, because that's the model that we're following. So that kind of future of work, people will be looking for that incremental way to earn money, because in the next 5 years, I'm afraid, I don't mean to be a bit gloomy about this, but, I think the world is going to obviously have to catch up from the effects of COVID from an economic perspective. So it's inevitable, and it's being lots of different forces are moving us on this journey. Hey, that sounds pretty scary. Let's think about the good side of gig. The good side of gig can be, it's an opportunity for people that need work, who can't commit to shifts and schedules like other people, to find that opportunity. It's for people, companies, diversity and inclusion, of course, very important, rightly topical. There's no unconscious bias in this model. In the gig model here for Limitless, it's an online onboarding process. So, that is really important. I think people who are differently abled, who maybe can't access an fantastic opportunity, as long as we protect the experts and the workers, as long as we protect them with fair pay and rewards, with a balance of freedom and genuine freedom. So freedom being, you can work as much or as little as you want, and you have choice over the work that you do or you don't do. Now that's an important word, choice, because in our model, if you come on, you don't have to take the next job, if you like. You can imagine other forms of gig economy. You don't have to take the next job. You could come on, look at 50 different questions from customers, and pick a question that you know how to answer well, or none at all. And if you do or you don't, there's no penalization in the algorithms over that in terms of what your choice has been. Sounds so simple and subtle, and I'm right in the weeds of the detail, but gig can be a very good force. And I really see it as being very much the future of work.
I was just gonna say, just to close out that sounds so fulfilling. I mean, I've walked through hundreds of call centers and watched agents just literally have to pick up the phone one after the other, respond to emails, and to be able to make the choice what they answer next. I can only imagine that's going to shift the mindset of these people. Are going to say, hey, I'm going to do what I love to do.
Yeah.
And this is also another podcast episode, but I talked, and Betsy and I have talked with clients about this idea of the admiration that top companies really, 5-star companies really deliver. And I think what I'm hearing as we talk today is we're moving from just a state of empathy to where your customer service, your customer success team will be admired because of how good they are, the value they bring to the table, just up levels that company, that brand so much more.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to add too, Roger, that it is very clear that within your business model, at the very heart is how much you care for people. You've built in so much into your model that directly has a positive impact on the people. And I love that. I already admire that, Tony, the whole admiration. just comes shining through. So with that, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. On our show, we really enjoy giving our guests an opportunity to shine a spotlight on a nonprofit or a charitable organization that you either support or just have a real affinity for. And so just wanted to ask you if there's an organization or two that you and your company really lock arms with to make the world a better place.
Well, yes, there is one particular organization that we like to, wherever we can, raise money for. So, for example, most recently, I think other firms have followed suit. We don't send out Christmas cards or little boxes to anybody anymore. What we do is we send an email saying, sorry, there's no Christmas card for you this year, I guess. But we've given that money to a charity, and there are other events that we do, and it's for a charity, I should say, called beam.org. So that's BEAM.org, ORG. And it's a crowd funding platform that supports homeless people through training and into stable paid work. And essentially it gives homeless people, a sense of career and pride and, true independence, which I think is really obviously important and something that, we've given a lot of thought to. And the fact that it's in the crowdfunding place, of course, it's close to our hearts of using, good gig, which is, so yeah, I encourage everyone to go to beam.org and have a look. It's a very worthy charity. I think as we expand globally, of course, we will look at other good causes as we grow as a business.
That's awesome. I love that. And again, it ties into, and I know you don't do it because of your brand, but it just shows how deeply that your organization cares about people. Wow, this has gone so fast. Tony, do you have any final questions or comments for Roger?
I think the one thing that really stands out, and, would love just a few moments of reflection on this is, we've got so much changing in the world right now. And you mentioned the C word, right? You mentioned COVID. Do you perceive that we're going to get back to normal, or are we already in what you perceive to be the beginning of the new normal?
Well,
it's a big question, I know.
Absolutely. I've got an opinion in a much more narrow space of perhaps the CX industry, where I feel I can comment more appropriately, because I think the bigger question we're all asking for in our families, in our households, when we watch the TV news for the latest information, we're all thinking about when can we get back to some semblance of normality, whatever that is. So I think, though, let me just reflect on two things very quickly. From a CEO perspective, I think is a mind shift, and I'm happy to say I've seen in myself the need rise to the top of the agenda to find the ability to enable my team to work more remotely more often. So, that's going to be in the mindset of many businesses and executives. So when we return in a world where maybe vaccinations and have got to a point where we can all return to a normal life in terms of social interaction, I think that we will see our workforce at Limitless working in a combination of working in the office and working more from remotely, working from home. So that's going to happen. That wouldn't have happened. That shift has accelerated because of COVID. And I think that actually it won't just be about salary, benefits, culture. It'll be, and can I work from where I want to work? There was an announcement with Spotify recently, and there'll be many following suit. You can work for us anywhere in the world, and etc. So I think that's an inevitable thing that's going to happen. No, I don't think we're in that new normal state now. I think the CX industry, what's going on in our space is the major enterprises quickly dealt with firefighting the problem for the first 6-9 months. So that was basically February, March last year through to Christmas, getting through this seasonal peak. What I'm seeing coming straight out the gate this year is we need to change our operating models. They're coming out to us. They're talking to us about GigCX. Remote working, more resilience within their model is now a given. The way it's been explained to me by some other senior execs is this. Before we were interested, now it's strategy. I think that says it all.
What a great way to close out this conversation. Roger, thank you so much for your time. We're going to be watching for sure. This is a very exciting category that you have created, and we're just really excited to be connected with you. And we look forward to watching your success unfold.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Betsy, this was such an amazing interview. I absolutely loved hearing Roger's take on the future of work, the future of customer experience, how they're making the future a reality today with this GigCX idea, more than an idea, the platform that they've built. And the one thing that really stands out to me is how they understand the changing environment that we're going through right now. And it's not just COVID. They were doing this before COVID. They foresaw this. And if anything, it's going to accelerate the pace that their company grows and the category as a whole grows. And the piece that was so meaningful is when he talks about there's this, I think there's this fear. Let me step back for a moment. There's this fear that, gosh, people are going to lose their jobs because AI is going to take over everything. And he's like, we didn't say AI, but automation, right? Automation is not going to take over everything because the more complex the product gets, the more we need humans to be involved in the process. So I just think it's refreshing to see, okay, we're not going to be all out of jobs in the next 5 years, but we're going to be doing higher level. We're going to be doing things we're more passionate about potentially if the GigCX economy can grow.
I agree. The human element of their story is so prevalent on so many different levels. And I think really Roger is just such an example for how a CEO should be thinking about people, about the world, being innovative, like so many qualities that CEOs need to have to lead into this next future post-COVID. He nails it. And I just think it is very refreshing to see.
I think one of the things that stands out to me is a lot of companies look to what do our customers need in order to innovate and create the next disruptive technology or company. And what's funny is they really looked and said, what do our employees need? And they created another company for that really looks at it and solves that problem. What the needs of the customer, what the needs of the employees are in a customer service environment. And so I find that to be fascinating because they're not creating just a technology to support existing customer service platforms that you might expect. They've created a whole new model of doing work. And I love that.
Yeah, agreed. Well, to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Really Know Your Customer podcast. We hope you will join us again. And until then, we hope you have a great day and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Really Know Your Customer. We hope you gained a lot of value from being here today. If you want to learn more about the work Betsy and Tony do to help their clients thrive, visit Betsy at thecongruitygroup.com and Tony at tonybodo.com. See you next time on the Really Know Your Customer show.